Join thousands of NFT traders who already start their day on CryptoSlam.
The world of crypto is getting bigger, and that has regulators and governments on the edge.
But, our sort of biggest goal has been, this year, in terms of, getting regulated, getting licensed, in terms of building out relationships with institutions, and trying to put together all the pieces that are necessary to build sort of robust connectivity.
Besides regulations, what will bring institutional money into crypto?
You need futures in order to bring that depth of efficiency and liquidity to a marketplace.
And what does the architecture of the new crypto ecosystem look like?
It is about these killer apps with great utility or entertainment that, in which that have completely abstracted the infrastructure layer for a user, right?
Coming up on this special edition of Word on the Blog, On Location, Sam Bankman-Fried, billionaire founder and CEO of FTX, and Amy Wu, who heads the $2 billion FTX venture fund, join in to dive deep into those topics and a whole lot more. Sam, what a conference. What a conference. How did we get from you back in the days of building this in Hong Kong to Bahamas, where we are right now?
Yeah, and it's been a lot of fun. I think part of it has just been, just keep building out the product, keep delivering, keep adding on, keep refining it, and keep moving forward. And to some extent, that's all there is putting one step in front of the other. But, I think outside of that, obviously there have been a lot of shifts in the industry over the last few years, and, seeing the institutional sort of adoption start to trickle in, see the interest really balloon, and seeing regulators start to get much more engaged in this space. Those have all reshaped what the industry looks like. And, obviously one of the reasons that we are here today is that, the Bahamas was one of the first countries to pass a crypto regulatory framework. And, we got licensed under it and, started building out an office here.
The office is here. You're injecting a lot of dollars into Bahamas, but also at this conference, very notably, a lot of the old guard, the old money, old Wall Street is here. What are they hearing that excites you? What are you trying to build a bridge to?
So, if you look at where most of the capital is today in the crypto ecosystem, it's with individuals, with crypto exchanges, and with protocols. When you look at where most of the capital is that wants to be in the crypto ecosystem today, most of it is in things like pension funds, mutual funds, ETFs, living with prime brokerages, with other forms of brokerages, and living in banks. And so you look at where a lot of people's access points are to the financial ecosystem, and they route through large institutional pools. And so, a lot of them would like to be getting involved in the ecosystem, but in order to do that in a way which is convenient and comfortable for them, we need to build the bridges between those institutional services and the crypto ecosystem. And I think that that's what our sort of biggest goal has been, this year, in terms of getting regulated, getting licensed, in terms of building out relationships with institutions, and trying to put together all the pieces that are necessary to build sort of robust connectivity.
Let's talk about those pieces because they're not here yet. They're not here yet. Let's say, for example, you have a big sovereign wealth fund and they're like, okay, let's go for 100, 200 BTC play.
Yep.
Who's the counterparty? Is that available? And despite it being blockchain, trust is a huge thing still.
Oh, absolutely. And, we have a lot of conversations that are a little bit confusing with large pools of money where, we'll sort of approach them like, look, we'd love to help support you guys. What is it that you would want? What would make, and they're like, oh, we really want to be investing in the ecosystem. I'm like, that's great. Are you? No. And so why not? And the answer is not always specific. The answer is sort of look, we've been talking with our compliance department, and they need to get comfortable with this setup. And what does comfortable mean? It's a diffuse thing, right? And so, they'll say, well, how about custody? I'm like, yeah, let's talk about that. Like, what would you like in terms of custody? And they're like, well, is there a custodian? I'm like, do you mean like a qualified custodian, or is it like a trust company? And they're like, well, I don't know, right? Like, it's not clear exactly what that means, right? And they're like, well, how about like the platforms? Like, are they like regulated? And the answer is, well, in the United States, sort of. Like, there's the money transmitter regime, right? We have like money service business licensed money transmitters. Those sort of mostly look at the transfers, though, rather than the like order book piece of it, right? And there isn't really a federal markets regulator right now for most crypto markets in the United States. And so that's another thing where they're like, well, it would definitely give us a lot more comfort if there was a clear, if we knew who it was who is overseeing these marketplaces, like what agency is it? And so that's sort of another piece of this that they think about. They think about, well, how about the assets? Like, how about stable coins? Can we trust them? Like, and I'm like, I think like these set of stable coins are, really upstanding companies, and we use them heavily and sort of have trust in them. Like, great. Is there like a, are they registered? The answer is, well, no, there's nothing for them to register as right now, and as money transmitters or something. But like, again, that's not really what they're asking. And so I think there's a lot of pieces here where like they don't know exactly what it is they're looking for. It's a holistic thing, but in general, a lot of this comes down to like, what is the regulatory oversight here? Who are the bodies who are like doing at least some amount of diligence on it? Who's overseeing the custody, who's auditing that or vetting that or something like that, and also just like, how do we know we're not missing something here that's going to like screw with us, that's going to like hurt us in a way we didn't realize we could be hurt? And I think the biggest piece of this are getting federal oversight over the exchanges, over the assets, over the stable coins.
There's a little aspect of CYA perspective. At the end of the day, it's I can inject a huge pool of money, great return, possibility of return, but what is the counter? I personally
will get fired if I screw that up. Like,
exactly.
And obviously prices might go down, right? But if I do that and I lose money for something that has nothing to do with prices going down, like, I will personally be held liable for that. I need to feel comfortable with this. And I think that's really the thing. It's not so much like, here is my specific problem, as like, how do I just like feel like this is gonna work the way it says it works?
And the traditional space has the luxury of that over the course of 50 to 100 years in capitalism.
That's right.
That all of the safety, the safety net exists. Yep. Does that safety net exist here in crypto? Let's be frank.
I think the answer is only sort of, and you don't always know whether or not it exists. And in some places it does, and in some places it doesn't. And it's not easy from the outside to prove which ones actually do have it and which don't, right? Which is another way of saying, well, not in a generic sense, not in a generalized sense, right? Like, there's, and again, there might be places where people build up trust that there are a lot of levels of safety, but you sort of have to do that on an individualized, bespoke basis, which is not practical. And so that is like a big piece of what's missing here. Yes, the trust and the safety net, and the sense that like, even if things go haywire, like, it's going to do what it said it would do. This product is what it claims to be.
What is the play for FTX? You started out going to the retail space, you're an exchange, et cetera, but you're so much more than that now.
So, yeah, and one thing that's worth noting, every exchange's customer base looks different, and we do have customers from all walks of life on the platform and from a number of different jurisdictions. But if you look at who our core customer base has been historically, they've been power users, whether they're individuals or corporations. Most of the volume has come from people trading large amounts, which is not the same as every platform, right? Like, some Coinbase is much more specialized in the sort of long tail consumer demographic, and so that had been our sort of bread and butter. And I think looking forward, I basically see it with the core product, sort of three large areas, and then a lot of sort of potential expansion opportunities. So I'll just say, potential expansion things like, NFT gaming is like an example of one that we're excited about. There are a number of others, but when you look at the core things, one of them is just continuing to build out that product of like international power users, right? Non-US users who trade significant volume. Like in every asset class in the world, most of it doesn't trade just through vanilla spot markets, right? Most of it trades through with some amount of futures or derivatives or financing or margin or leverage or structured products or something like that, right? And those are by and large not available in the United States today. So that's one piece, just continuing to grow that out. A second piece is being able to grow that out in the United States and being able to offer the same level of liquidity and depth of market to US users that are, that's currently being offered offshore. And so like today, 95% of volume in this space happens offshore,
yes,
right? And you can guess where the most liquid markets are. They're offshore. And what's the reason for that? It's that you need structured products, you need futures in order to bring that depth of efficiency and liquidity to a marketplace. And so, that, and when you look at institutional demand, right, they are going to be looking for what is the most liquid deep market in the world if they want to have real money in this space, right? And so I think, and when you look at the consumer side, right, I think consumer protection is super important. These are all going to require the same thing at its core, which is a federal regulator to oversee the marketplaces in the United States. That is the single biggest thing that's missing. And we, I think frankly, we would be super happy for any reasonable regulator to be our regulator, to oversee our activities, to be the licensing and registration entity, and to enforce what they think is appropriate on our platform and the industry more generally. I think obviously SEC and CFTC are sort of the two markets agencies, in the United States. And, when you look at, especially at, certainly at the future side, right, and at the sort of commodity asset side, so putting aside security tokens and things like that, the CFTC has been a regulator for crypto futures. And, we have an amendment before them to, activate our U.S. Futures platform. And I think that is by far the key thing that's necessary to protect American consumers, to protect against systemic risk, and to bring industry onshore, to give institutional access, is to have federal regulatory agency start to license and register the platforms in the United States. It hasn't happened yet. We're optimistic that that it will start happening, and we are really excited to work with them to get there. I think that the by far the single most important thing to make the industry safe and efficient is for the CFTC to start granting and to be given the green light.
So is that the play in Dubai for you?
So that's been the play in Dubai and in a number of other places. If you look internationally, right, we have licensed exchange in Dubai. We also have one in Japan. We have one in Australia, in Switzerland, in Cyprus, Gibraltar, in the Bahamas, obviously, and we're applying in a number of other places as well. And so much different from 2 years ago when almost no jurisdictions had registered or licensed anything. At this point, we are starting to see some jurisdictions come out and issue those license and oversee the space. I think that has helped the international market start to move in the direction of growing and maturing. We'd love to see that happen in the United States as well. I think it's extremely important.
So from the regulatory front, last question, to social culture, all of that combined, Elon Musk buys Twitter, going to take it private. Your thoughts?
Excited to see what happens there, right? I think there's a lot of things that can be done with the product, that can be done with it, both from the perspective of a great user experience, but also from the perspective of it being an important town square. And obviously, I don't know what's going to happen there. And but
it's a very big, important part of the crypto conversation.
It is, and frankly, of the more general conversation, right? It is one of the most important platforms in the world when it comes to discourse on a number of different topics. So, really excited to see how that develops.
Another important platform right here on Forkast, and it's great to see you. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Great conference. On the other side, what made Amy Wu join the ApeCoin DAO?
They don't mean anything other than a group of people coming together to in pursuit of some essential passion.
And later, what could Elon Musk's Twitter takeover mean for the crypto world when Word on the Block returns?
If you don't understand the future, you'll never see your place in it. Introducing Forecast Plus, covering all things blockchain, independent reporting, insights, and access from Asia to the world. We cut through the noise where technology, insights, and access meet, where smart conversations happen. Make friends with disruption. Forecast Plus.
Amy Wu, it's so great to have you here because I feel like you're one of the construction workers in this ecosystem, and you've been granted $2 billion from FTX Ventures to actually pick and choose what an ecosystem looks like. And I think that's an incredible platform.
Yeah, I feel super lucky to be here, leading the fund. And I love this analogy of the construction worker because that's literally how we feel, that we are builders ourselves, with FTX, and we're investing in builders. And we are playing an active role in helping drive mainstream adoption of crypto and blockchain today, and just working hand in hand with these builders.
Talk about your experience. I mean, you come with incredible experience. Grew up in the media space, being part of the team that spearheaded some of the biggest deals that we saw there, came from the discovery space, and then founding ApeCoin DAO. How did that actually happen?
Yeah, so before I came to FTX, I was a partner at Lightspeed, and I covered crypto and gaming. Yeah. And then, so my fascination with the NFT space and also just consumer internet. First, I've been investing in consumer internet for a number of years and have also operated there, as an executive at Discovery. And NFTs are so fascinating because they've clearly captured mainstream interests of the population. And that's how consumer trends start, right? It's not necessarily that the technology is the best, but you're sort of capturing the zeitgeist and culture, and that's absolutely what's happened with the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT collection, for example. This is the most popular collection in the world right now. And, I got to know the team some months ago, and the community was thinking about launching the ApeCoin DAO, right? And so I was asked to join the board of that, and was totally thrilled to, because it was at the time, and it is now, one of the most visible experimentations in decentralized autonomous organization governance of one of the most valuable IPs right now in the Web3 space. And so joined a couple months ago, and along with Yasui, the founder of Animoca, also Alexis Ohanian, founder of Reddit, a couple of others, and we've been working pretty much on a daily basis in helping set up along with the community, the DAO, the governance structure, helping shepherd the first proposals to sort of set up an ecosystem where we could give grants, the community can approve grants, et cetera, to build on top of ApeCoin community, and specifically the ApeCoin token. And so it's been challenging, it's been rewarding, it's early still in the process. Yeah. The challenging part of working with the DAO is that everyone in the community has a voice, and they can take it publicly on Twitter, whether you're involved with the project or not involved with the project, for example, like Kobe from Crypto Cobain has done. And so putting yourself out there is uncomfortable, but also just thrilling, given how innovative the space is right now.
So when it comes to a DAO, that social zeitgeist, how would you explain it as, is this a democracy? Is it a new channel to integrate with your core audience in a meaningful way so that they do spend dollars with you? What is it in terms of the value proposition that maybe the old world needs to understand?
DAO is is a pretty popular concept in Web3 for a couple of reasons. The first one is a legal one. There's very little hardline sort of guidance from a regulatory perspective on tokens and the securitization of that. And so therefore, a DAO is a safer way of bringing a token to life, for example. And that's the first reason why they're really popular. But also in Web3 is this ideology of decentralized governance, ownership to the community, power to the community, empowering them. And I would say that the community is literally voting by participating, buying tokens. Your vote is correlated with how many of the tokens that you own, and then you're essentially and you're applying your vote to that. And sometimes the decisions actually carried out on chain, like directly, right? Yeah. In terms of the difference in DAOs, like they don't mean anything other than a group of people coming together to in pursuit of some essential passion.
So what is that thinking now? You're on the inside, you're leading the FTX venture fund, you've got money to spend. What is the architecture that you're trying to build, the infrastructure that also incorporates this new thinking into what you're trying to build out?
We at FTX Ventures, we're excited across crypto and Web3 innovation right now. We're really excited to back generational founders with vision. We also very deeply look at the underlying technology, the underlying blockchain technology, for example, and really understand, today there's, let's say, tens of millions of people that own a token, trade tokens maybe, and far fewer than that actually are actively engaging in blockchain applications. But in the future, when there's hundreds of millions and billions of people interacting with that, with applications that need to run 1 million transactions per second on chain, does that blockchain, for example, actually scale? We look very deeply at the technology, and so we spend a lot of time actually in infrastructure and developer platforms, and we both are actively participating in these blockchain ecosystems by ourselves building applications on top of them, and primitives on top of them, and also looking for innovative applications to build on top, right?
Where are we in the life cycle of this house that we're building?
I love that question. I'm going to paint an end state picture.
Yes.
So today, let's say you live in New York City. You wake up in the morning and you're essentially picking up your Uber app and you're taking an Uber to work, and then you're maybe ordering on DoorDash. Your meal in the day. So notice that in none of those circumstances, none of those times, am I the user thinking, oh, and let me boot up my JavaScript application, it's running on Postgres, right, et cetera. And ultimately, it is about these killer apps with great utility or entertainment that that have completely abstracted the infrastructure layer for a user, right? So that's the end state, and we are not there today. Yeah. Today, we are actually building the infrastructure layer of the blockchain.
But you got to invite the capital in as well. I mean, this is why we're also seeing this space grow explosively, because now the institutions and the traditionals are coming into the space because they say, I cannot. This is a very bullish environment right now, despite what's happening in the macro economy and all of the pressures that we're even seeing in the VC space when it comes to, more of that speed. Why are people bullish about this space?
At a high level, I think many investors believe that blockchain technology is essentially as large of a paradigm shift in technology as mobile has been in technology. Yeah. And so therefore, in my lifetime, this is the biggest potential technology shift. That's why you see all of the capital flooding into the space. It started with crypto native funds, and then it was crypto hedge funds coming into venture, and then it's institutional investors coming into venture, et cetera, et cetera. There's so much capital in the space, and that's led to very high valuations, right? Yeah. Very high valuations, I would say, given to strong and less strong teams alike. That is driving some, challenging dynamics in the space, and also alignment, I think, of interest on both sides, the investor that's going to potentially build with you, a strategic investor, and the team itself.
Well, in the way that you're connecting buy side to sell side, we connect buy side to sell side on the knowledge level. But there's a huge knowledge gap.
There is a huge knowledge gap, yes. There's a gap actually in, for example, what's a Flatiron school for Web3, right? We need educational protocols and projects to help onboard. So right now, let's say there's maybe 200,000 blockchain developers right now building. We need to bring 5 million developers or 10 million developers around the world into blockchain eventually. And so how do we train them How do we get them comfortable? And then we start on the developer side, but then there's also marketers and product people, and then go-to-market talent, and we all need to bring. The number one of the biggest challenges for a blockchain company is actually recruiting talent.
Yeah.
And so there's education in terms of bringing these people in to build. There's also, of course, education around a user, whether you're buying a Bitcoin for the first time, where do I do that securely?
It doesn't matter how influential you are. You could be. We talk to our readers, some of whom are running funds, 2 billion AUM.
Yeah.
And they want to get into the space. They're on that same knowledge level as the high school kid who's got like 1,000 and ready to get into space. They both want to know. Their influence and impact very different, but they're on the same grade level.
I was told by a CEO of a Fortune 500 company that in no industry has he seen more information asymmetry than in blockchain and crypto. It truly is, depending on who you talk to, first of all, a lot of people have self-interests, right? They're holding some token, and so they're going to be, selling that, right? And so we spent a lot of time with education, both Sam and other, people at FTX and myself, and it starts off with just trying to explain layman terms, okay, here's your end business goal. All right, here's the different steps you can take to get there. Here's the limitations of the technology today. Here are the different players in the ecosystem, pros and cons of them. And we really try to lay it out in as neutral of a point as possible. And that was the purpose of Crypto Bahamas as well. We didn't call it FTX conference for a reason.
Right.
This was meant to be an interdisciplinary coming together of thought leaders in exploring their curiosity on crypto and Web3. And so that's, I think we've gotten pretty close to that with our first conference. We'll do better next year as well. But that really is the purpose here, that we kind of take a bit of a back seat and we let the thought leaders talk to each other and learn from each other.
We are veterans in media, you on the deal side, us in front of the camera and building our own thing. But we've been in this space for a while. It's changing fast. The old guard even is changing. And now everything's happening on Twitter. Your thoughts on how that's changing the crypto conversation, and even how social media platforms like Twitter and Elon Musk's obvious influence there in the crypto space as well, how that is all kind of coming together for you?
Well, all eyes on Elon and whether he's going to acquire, actually the deal will close and what he's going to do with Twitter if so. Of course, the loudest voices and the community of crypto has taken to Twitter, right, as the social network of choice. Crypto Twitter is real. The metaverse also.
It is real.
As in people have made friends, built businesses, made business relationships with completely anonymous accounts. I've done deals with people, I have no idea who they are, and I've met them on crypto Twitter. I'm like, this is literally the metaverse, which is incredible. And so that's why, we in the space have a tremendous amount of interest into what Elon's going to do with Twitter, if he takes the helm there. And he gets on a soapbox and he wants to understand and make sure that that this most influential news platform in the world essentially is not censored, right? And that's the thing that he really wants to, freedom of speech and removal of censorship. And it turns out that actually blockchain can really help with that, because hypothetically, if you can imagine that every message and tweet on Twitter actually is stored in some fashion on the blockchain, maybe the front-end interface of Twitter, the user doesn't see all of that. However, if anybody actually wanted to know if Twitter or anyone deleted a tweet from an important, influential political figure, and thereby, engage in censorship, you can actually see that on chain, because every single interaction could potentially be stored on chain for somebody to query and essentially bring up. That essentially solves Elon's censorship question, and we think that is incredibly exciting.
Amazing to talk to you, Amy. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me on.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us on this latest episode of Word on the Block. I'm Angie Lau, Editor-in-Chief of Forkast. Until the next time.